You know that feeling, right? Where you understand a language pretty well, maybe reading or listening, but then you try to actually think in it or speak, and it's like nothing. Your brain just freezes up.
Oh, absolutely. It's so common.
It really reminds me of this story we're looking into today about Maya. She's this young freelance designer in Manila, super talented, but she had this, well, frankly, embarrassing moment on a client call, someone from Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And the English she thought she knew just poof, gone. She just ended up kind of nodding and smiling, completely lost.
And that experience, that specific call, is often the catalyst, isn't it? That moment where the gap between passive understanding and active use becomes painfully clear. For Maya, it really sparked something.
It really did. Because what we're diving into today, based on this really detailed account we have, is how she went from that awkward call to genuinely, truly thinking in English.
Right.
And importantly, it wasn't about, just memorizing more words or drilling grammar. It was a much deeper shift, wasn't it? How her mind actually worked with the language.
Exactly. It was a fundamental change.
So our mission in this deep dive is to really unpack that. How did Maya make that switch? What challenges did she face? And crucially, what practical steps did she take? Because her methods, they offer insights that you, listening, can maybe apply to your own language learning or really learning any new skill.
Yeah. What makes her story so useful, I think, is how relatable it is. It's not some, high-level linguistic theory. It's one person's journey, very honest, tackling something many of us struggle with.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll follow her steps, look at the techniques she used, the mindset shifts, all of it.
Okay, let's do it. We'll follow her chronologically, looking at those key moments, those little breakthroughs, and the kind of rules she started setting for herself.
Yeah.
So let's start right at the beginning. Where was Maya at just before this change?
Okay, so picture this. Maya's 25, working as a freelance designer in Manila. She's comfortable reading and writing English for her job, emails, project descriptions, that kind of thing.
Functional.
Functional, exactly. But as we heard about that Canadian client call, that didn't translate into fluency. Speaking spontaneously, thinking on her feet in English, that was the struggle. That disconnect was the real motivator.
And she had bigger ambitions too, right? Like wanting to travel, maybe work abroad.
Yeah, she really did. That dream of working internationally was a big driver. But that client call was a wake-up call. It really hammered home that her current English level was, well, a barrier.
A roadblock.
Definitely. And she realized that night, apparently, that just passively learning wasn't cutting it anymore. She had to stop just learning English and start, living it.
That shift from passive to active or maybe immersive learning, that feels key.
Oh, it's absolutely crucial. It's the difference between treating English like a school subject versus seeing it as, a real tool for life.
So what were her first practical steps? How did she start living it?
Well, she jumped right in, changed her phone language to English, laptop too.
Okay, that sounds simple, but actually doing it, that's constant exposure.
Constant. Think how many times a day you glance at your phone. And then she did something interesting with social media. She unfollowed a lot of local accounts.
In her native language.
Yeah, and deliberately started following English-speaking creators, vloggers, artists, writers, whatever caught her interest.
Wow. So she was really curating her information environment. That must have felt weird at first. Overwhelming.
I imagine so. It takes persistence, definitely. You have to be okay with not understanding everything right away. But that constant bath of language, even if it's just background noise sometimes, it starts to rewire things subconsciously.
Like paving a path in your brain.
Exactly. You're strengthening those English neural pathways just through exposure.
And then came that moment in the grocery store. It seems so small, but you describe it as an aha moment.
It really was. She's just looking at produce, and the thought pops into her head directly in English. This is a tomato, it's red, I'll make soup tonight.
Without translating from Tagalog first.
Exactly. No translation step. Just direct thought in English. It sounds mundane, right? But for her, it was huge. Proof that her brain could actually do it.
What makes that so powerful? That simple, everyday thought.
It's the directness, the object, the concept, the English words all linked without the detour through her native language. It shows that the first footholds in thinking in a new language often come from these really familiar, concrete, everyday things.
Building that base layer.
Precisely.
And she built on that, didn't she? With this idea she called English mind mode.
Yeah, this was a really active technique. Basically, wherever she was, on the bus, brushing her teeth, walking home, she'd start narrating her surroundings or her actions to herself, silently, in English.
Like a running commentary.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Simple stuff. I see a dog, it's barking, that man is running. Just describing the immediate reality.
How does that constant self-narration help speed things up?
It forces that direct connection between English and the real world moment by moment. You're constantly retrieving words, forming simple sentences, linking language to concrete experience. It makes those connections stronger, faster, more automatic.
And it wasn't just objects and actions, right? She started doing it with feelings, too.
Yes, and this was interesting. She mentioned having an argument with a friend, and afterwards, she actually sat down and wrote about it in English. I feel sad, I feel angry, but I know I will be okay.
Wow.
She said it felt unnatural at first, trying to capture emotions in English, but also somehow powerful.
Why do you think expressing emotions in a new language feels so different, and why was it helpful?
Well, our emotional vocabulary is often deeply tied to our first language, right? Those words carry so much weight, so much personal history. Trying to express those same feelings in a new language, it can feel a bit detached, maybe?
Yeah, less immediate.
Possibly. But by doing it, Maya was forging new connections between English and her inner emotional world. It wasn't just intellectual anymore, it was becoming personal.
And she talked about this shift being gradual, like changing gears in a car, from nouns to verbs to full thoughts.
That's a great analogy. It highlights that it's a process with stages. You start with the building blocks, naming things. Then you add actions, verbs. Then you start connecting them into more complex thoughts, expressing sequences or ideas.
Like moving from first gear to second to third, gaining fluency.
Exactly. Each stage builds on the last. It's not usually an overnight switch.
And all this practice started showing results. She mentioned another client call, this time with someone in New York.
Right. And this time, it was different. She found herself understanding more easily, responding more naturally. That feeling of panic wasn't there in the same way.
That must have felt amazing. Like, okay, this is actually working.
Hugely validating. Those moments of real-world success are like fuel for the journey. They prove the effort is paying off and give you the confidence to keep going.
And her big takeaway from this first phase was powerful. Thinking in English is not magic. It's a habit, a daily choice, and I'm choosing it every day.
That emphasis on conscious choice, on habit formation, that seems to be the bedrock.
Okay, so she's building this habit, thinking in English in these everyday ways. What happens next? Where does she go from there?
Well, the next big milestone was waking up one morning, and literally her first conscious thought of the day was in English.
It's popped into her head.
Yeah. Apparently, it was simply, I need coffee.
Huh. Relatable,
Yeah.
but significant.
Very significant. It shows that English wasn't just something she was doing anymore. It was starting to become her brain's default setting, even in that groggy, just woken up state.
It reinforces her point about it becoming a habit an
Yeah.
ingrained pattern.
Exactly. And she started to really understand this core idea. Thinking in English means skipping the translation step, using English directly, even for the simplest things.
What's the real advantage of cutting out that internal translation? Why is that direct link so important?
Speed, mainly, and fluency. Translation adds an extra mental step. It slows everything down, your thinking, your speaking. When you can go directly from the concept to the English word or phrase, thoughts just flow much more smoothly. It's like taking the express train instead of the local one making all the stops.
Makes sense? But then she hit another hurdle, right? The inner critic.
Yes. The negative voice. This is something so many learners face. She described this voice popping up, usually in her native language, whispering doubts.
Like what?
Things like, this is too hard, why are you even doing this? You'll never sound like a native speaker, you'll never be truly fluent. All that negative self-talk. And she said it could be really loud, really persistent.
Ugh, I think we can all relate to that voice in some area of life. Why is it so powerful? And what can you even do about it?
It's powerful because it often taps into our deepest fears: fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough. It's a defense mechanism almost, trying to keep us in our comfort zone.
So how did Maya fight back?
This is brilliant. She decided to answer that negative voice, but she answered it in English.
No way.
Yes. So when the voice said, this is too hard, she'd reply, in her head, or even writing it down, no. I'm not perfect, but I'm better than yesterday. I will keep going.
Wow, using the target language to silence the critic. That's powerful.
It really is. It's like taking control of the narrative within the language she's learning. It becomes this form of mental practice, reinforcing her commitment and building positive associations with English.
So she turned it into a conscious strategy, replacing the negative self-talk.
Exactly. She started actively reprogramming her mind. If she made a mistake, instead of beating herself up in Tagalog, she'd consciously think in English, it's okay, mistakes help me learn. If she felt shy, she'd think, I'm learning, I'm growing.
How does that consistent positive self-talk in English actually help with the language itself, beyond just feeling better?
Well, it reduces the anxiety around using the language, which makes you more willing to practice and take risks. But also, you're literally practicing positive vocabulary and sentence structures in English, embedding them in a really meaningful personal context. It reinforces the language itself.
Then she had this chat with her cousin Leela, right? Who Maya thought was super fluent.
Yeah, this was another key moment. She saw Leela as this effortless English speaker. But then Leela admitted that even she gets stuck sometimes, searches for words. And that was a revelation for Maya. It made her realize that thinking in English isn't about reaching some mythical state of perfection where you never stumble. It's more about just being present with the language, using what you have, imperfections and all.
That's so important. Lowering the bar from perfection to presence or progress.
Exactly. It takes the pressure off. It normalizes the struggle that even advanced speakers sometimes feel.
And that led to another one of her rules.
Yes. Don't judge your English thoughts. Just let them be. It's about allowing the language to flow in her mind without constant self-critique.
Why is that non-judgment so critical for fluency?
Because judgment kills flow. If you're constantly stopping, analyzing, criticizing every thought, you interrupt the momentum, you create anxiety. Letting the thought simply be, even if they're not perfect, encourages your brain to keep going, to keep practicing without getting bogged down.
So she kept practicing naming things, asking simple questions in her head, thinking full thoughts, and then she recorded herself.
Yeah, she started recording herself just talking about her day in English, and she mentioned this moment of listening back and actually recognizing her own voice speaking English and it sounding okay.
That must have been a trip, hearing yourself sound like an English speaker.
A really powerful moment of validation, I think. Tangible proof of progress. It helps solidify that identity. I am someone who speaks English.
And she summed up this chapter beautifully. The voice inside my head now speaks English, and that voice is kind.
That kindness is key, isn't it? Transforming the inner critic into an inner coach.
Definitely. Okay, so her inner world is becoming more English. How does she start bringing that more into the outer world?
Well, she starts consciously turning her external environment into a classroom, essentially. One way was through passive immersion, listening to English podcasts, music.
Just having it on?
Yeah, but interestingly, she said she focused less on understanding every single word and more on the rhythm, the intonation, the emotional feel of the language.
Why focus on rhythm and emotion first?
It helps you develop an ear for the natural cadence of the language, how it flows, how feelings are expressed, without the pressure of 100% comprehension right away. It's like learning the music before the lyrics, almost.
It's a nice way to put it.
And then she combined that passive listening with very active observation. Like on the train, she'd consciously narrate what she saw people doing.
Like her internal narration, but focused outwards.
Exactly. The woman in the red coat is reading a mystery novel, that kind of thing. Constantly connecting English to the world around her.
How does that active external narration help cement the language?
It forces retrieval and use of vocabulary and grammar in real time based on immediate context. You're constantly practicing making those mental links stronger and more accessible when you actually need to speak. It's like life practice all the time.
And her reading changed too. She moved beyond learner materials.
Yeah, she decided to tackle a full-length fiction novel, just a regular book written in English. And she talked about getting lost in the story, feeling the emotions.
Not just decoding words, but actually experiencing the narrative.
Exactly. That signifies a much deeper level of engagement. You're understanding nuance, subtext, the way emotions are conveyed. It's a richer, more immersive way to learn than just reading textbooks.
And she had this motto, "Today, I will turn everything around me into a classroom."
Powerful, isn't it? She'd be sitting in a restaurant and actively practice describing the decor, the food, her own thoughts about it, all in English.
What's the benefit of adopting that mindset, seeing everything as a learning opportunity?
It dissolves the boundary between study time and real life. Language learning becomes integrated into everything you do. Every interaction, every observation is a chance to practice and reinforce. It makes learning continuous and much more relevant.
And she even started playing with the language, like saying thank you in different tones.
Yeah, I love that detail. It shows she's getting comfortable, right? Moving beyond just literal meaning to exploring nuance, intonation, how you say something changes the meaning. It indicates a growing confidence and playfulness.
A sign of really starting to feel at home in the language.
Definitely. And then she took a bigger step, joining an online English conversation group.
Ooh, actual interaction. How did that go?
She mentioned how rewarding it felt to actually use her English to connect with people from different countries, to share her ideas and understand theirs.
How important is that real-time conversation practice?
It's absolutely crucial. It's where the rubber meets the road. You get immediate feedback. You have to think on your feet. You practice listening and responding spontaneously. Plus, the social connection itself is a huge motivator.
And her teacher had that great quote, "Language is not just words. It's how we carry our thoughts, our memories, our dreams."
It reframes language as something much deeper than just a communication tool. It's part of our identity, how we process and share our inner world. Understanding that really changes how you approach learning it, I think.
It makes it more personal, more meaningful.
Exactly. And Maya's takeaways from this chapter reflect that. Everything can teach me English if I pay attention. Thinking in English means thinking clearly, simply, and kindly. And my world is now an English classroom, and it's beautiful.
Such a positive shift in perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the external world is now her classroom. But then she did something different, a day of silence.
Yeah, this was a fascinating experiment. She decided to spend an entire day not speaking at all, specifically to listen more closely to her internal English voice.
Just turning the focus completely inward. Why do that?
I think it was about removing all external pressures and distractions, just observing her own mind, seeing how the English was flowing naturally without the need to perform or communicate outwardly, a kind of deep linguistic self-awareness exercise.
Interesting. So what did she do during this silent day?
She continued that internal narration, but maybe even more consistently. Making tea, the steam is rising, the cup is warm, sitting on her balcony. This is peaceful, this is good. Eating breakfast, the egg is soft, the toast is crunchy. Just a constant stream of simple English observations about her actions and surroundings.
How is that silent internal narration different from the vocal practice she was doing?
It's completely private. Zero pressure, no worry about mistakes or being understood. It allows for maybe more freedom to just let the thoughts flow, to experiment internally without any self-consciousness, like a private rehearsal.
And she got playful with it, too, giving personalities to fruit.
She did. She described strawberries as shy and blueberries as tiny and proud. It shows that growing comfort and creativity, moving beyond just literal description into more imaginative uses of the language.
A sign she's really making the language her own.
Definitely. And she used the silence for other things, too. She read her English novel and practiced summarizing paragraphs silently to herself in English.
Testing her comprehension and reformulation skills internally.
Exactly. And she even looked through old photos and mentally described the scenes and memories in English.
Wow, so she was like rewriting her past experiences in English in her head.
In a way, yes. It's about anchoring the language not just to the present, but integrating it into her personal history, her memories, making it feel even more deeply part of her.
And she kept this up all day, even during a walk.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Mentally describing the playground, the bakery, the park. Just a continuous, silent English monologue.
What's the cumulative effect of doing that for a whole day?
It's like an intensive workout for the English thinking part of the brain. Constant activation, constant reinforcement of vocabulary, grammar, and just the sheer habit of thinking in English.
And her reflection at the end of the day was really something.
It was profound. I didn't speak a word today, but my mind spoke all day in English, and I understood myself.
That understanding herself in English.
Yeah.
Wow.
It highlights that fluency isn't just about speaking out loud, it's also about that internal clarity and comfort. And that led her to redefine fluency for herself.
How so?
She decided fluency wasn't about speaking fast or using fancy words. It was about feeling free. Free to think, to feel, to be in this new language.
Shifting the focus from external performance to internal liberation. That's powerful.
Very. It's a much more personal and attainable definition for many people.
And she ended the day with a quiet moment of self-acknowledgement.
Yeah, just whispering to her reflection, "You're doing well. I'm proud of you." That self-compassion is so important. And then that final thought, "You are becoming," acknowledging the ongoing process.
Okay, so after that intense day of internal focus, how did she bring that back into her more active, outward-facing practice?
Well, she started integrating English more consciously into her routines, especially mornings. She began speaking affirmations to herself in the mirror, in English.
Like what kind of affirmations?
Things like, "Good morning," "You are strong," "You are learning," "You are growing." starting the day by reinforcing that positive identity as an English speaker.
That's like priming the pump for the day.
Exactly, setting a positive intention. And she also started practicing speaking more formally, like rehearsing a short speech in front of the mirror. First reading it, then trying to recite it from memory.
Why practice speaking aloud like that, even just to the mirror?
It builds vocal fluency. You get used to the physical act of making English sounds, the rhythm, the intonation. Reciting from memory also strengthens recall and builds confidence for speaking more spontaneously.
And she put this into practice in her online class, giving a presentation.
She did, fully in English. And importantly, she said her focus wasn't on being perfect, but on getting her meaning across, being authentic.
Prioritizing communication over grammatical perfection.
Right, which is a key step towards fluency. You have to be willing to communicate with your current level, not wait until it's perfect.
And her teacher noticed her improvement.
Yes, she got positive feedback, which must have been a great boost. And Maya herself reflected on it, remembering how scared she used to be of speaking and acknowledging how far she'd come.
That act of pausing to acknowledge progress seems really important.
It's vital for motivation. Language learning can feel slow sometimes, so recognizing those milestones, however small, keeps you going. It proves the effort is worthwhile.
And she used the mirror metaphor again. The mirror doesn't lie. It shows who you are becoming.
Yeah, the mirror as a reflection of that evolving English-speaking self. Every sentence is proof. Every word is progress. It's about seeing the tangible results of the inner work.
It connects language learning to identity transformation.
Exactly. And she even said, language is a mirror of the soul, suggesting this really deep connection she's forming with English.
How did she wrap up her days then?
She reflected, today I didn't just think in English. I spoke it. I shared a part of me, and that matters. And she started ending her day with, good night, English, Maya. See you tomorrow. Fully embracing that identity.
Wow. That's quite a journey already.
Yeah.
But did she still face setbacks? It couldn't have all been smooth sailing from there.
Oh, definitely not. Learning's rarely linear. There was a day she felt unwell, didn't have much energy, and the thought of skipping her English practice was really strong.
The temptation to just take a day off.
Right. But then that inner voice, the one she'd cultivated, piped up. Even on slow days, you can grow. It shows how ingrained the habit had become.
That internal motivation kicking in.
Exactly. But even when she tried, she hit frustration. She struggled with writing something, and those old negative thoughts started creeping back in. This is too hard. I'm not getting anywhere.
A plateau moment. It happens.
It does. And it's important for learners, for you listening, to remember that's normal. It doesn't mean you failed. It's just part of the process. Sometimes you need to push through, sometimes maybe ease off slightly, but not give up.
And she remembered advice from her teacher about mistakes.
Yes, just when she needed it. Mistakes are proof that you are trying. Don't fear them. Welcome them.
That shift in perspective again. Mistakes aren't failures. They're feedback.
Exactly. They show you where you need to focus. Reframing them like that is incredibly freeing. It takes away the fear that can paralyze you.
And she acted on that, didn't she? She wrote something down.
She did. She wrote boldly in her notebook, today I will make mistakes, and that's okay.
Just giving herself permission to be imperfect.
Yes. That explicit self-acceptance is so powerful. It lowers anxiety and creates space for learning and experimentation without the pressure of perfection.
And she recorded herself again, but this time without preparing.
Yeah, just speaking spontaneously, knowing it wouldn't be perfect, but embracing the reality of her current level. A real act of vulnerability.
Why is recording yourself, even with the flaws, beneficial?
It gives you honest feedback. You hear your pronunciation, your hesitations, your word choices. It can be uncomfortable, sure, but it's a fantastic tool for self-assessment and identifying areas to improve.
And this led to another redefinition of fluency for her.
Yes. Fluency is not perfection. Fluency is connection. Shifting the goalpost from flawless grammar to effective communication and relating to others.
That focus on connection seems much more human, much more achievable.
It really does. Because ultimately, that's why we learn languages, right? To connect.
She put that into practice, too, calling her aunt in Canada.
She did. They had a whole conversation in English, and Maya consciously decided to embrace any mistakes, even laugh about them with her aunt.
How'd that go? Was her aunt supportive?
Very. Her aunt noticed her improvement even with the mistakes. That kind of supportive interaction with a fluent speaker where you feel safe to try and fail is incredibly encouraging.
It builds confidence in a low-stakes way.
Absolutely. And Maya recognized the magic of perseverance in this, just keeping going, even when it's hard, even when you make errors.
And her view on mistakes completely flipped.
Totally. Mistakes are not enemies. They are my teachers. Every error is a lesson. Every stumble is a step. That growth mindset is key.
How can learners cultivate that resilience towards mistakes?
It's about consciously choosing to see them as learning opportunities. Analyze them. Don't just get frustrated by them. Ask, why did I make that error? And celebrate the effort, the trying, not just the perfect result.
She found bravery in that imperfection.
Yes. Listening back to her imperfect recording, she saw the honesty, the effort, and she had this big realization. To think in English doesn't mean thinking perfectly. It means thinking freely.
That freedom, again, it keeps coming back.
It seems to be the core of it for her.
Okay, so she's navigated the setback, embraced mistakes. What's next on her English journey? What's the dream?
Well, she literally asks herself that. What is my dream in English? She starts connecting her language skills to her bigger life goals.
Why is defining that dream or vision so important?
It provides direction and purpose. It answers the why. When you know what you want to do with the language, it fuels your motivation through the tough spots. It makes the effort meaningful.
So what was Maya's English dream?
It was multifaceted. To speak freely, naturally, to feel the language almost like music, to use it to help others, maybe through her design work, and significantly, to be able to tell her own story in English.
Sharing her own narrative.
Yeah.
That feels like a really deep level of ownership.
It absolutely is. It's about expressing your unique self, your experiences in this new language. It's moving beyond functional communication to authentic self-expression.
And she started living this dream in small ways, like ordering in cafes.
Yeah, confidently ordering, engaging in small talk. And she also mentioned observing native speakers, but instead of feeling intimidated or frustrated by what she didn't understand.
She focused on what she could grasp.
Exactly. Approaching it with curiosity, not judgment. That shift is huge for confidence in real-world settings.
It's empowering, moving from feeling like an outsider to an active participant.
And that led to another realization. Even when I don't understand everything, I still belong here. English is mine too. Claiming that ownership.
How important is that feeling that this language is mine too?
It's fundamental. It shifts your mindset from being a perpetual learner on the outside to being a legitimate user on the inside. It reduces anxiety and encourages participation.
She heard something on a podcast that resonated too.
Yes. Don't wait for fluency to start living your English life. Start now with the English you have.
That's great advice. Don't wait for perfect. Just start living it.
It was a catalyst for her, realizing she didn't need to be flawless to begin using English for the things she cared about. She just needed to be brave enough to start.
So what does she do?
She decided to write a short story in English, Not worrying about perfect grammar, just focusing on expressing her ideas, getting the story out.
Creative expression is practice.
Exactly. It allows you to play with language, find your voice, and then she read it aloud, proudly, connecting with her own English creation.
And she made a commitment.
A patient one. I will build my English life one word at a time, and that will be enough. Recognizing it's a marathon, not a sprint.
And then she started dreaming in English.
Yes. That ultimate sign of immersion, when the language seeps into your subconscious. Her English dream was literally becoming reality in her sleep.
Incredible. So the dream is alive. How does she take this out into the world even more consistently?
She makes another conscious decision. Today, I will use English outside. Not just in books, not just in my room, but in the real world. Actively seeking opportunities.
Moving from practice space to living space.
Precisely. And she notices that as she walks around, her brain is just automatically thinking of signs, actions, everything in English, effortlessly.
That automaticity again, a sign of real fluency setting in.
Definitely. The translation step is gone. English is becoming the primary operating system for those moments.
And she had a positive interaction at a bookstore.
Yeah. Confidently asked for English books, bought them, chatted a bit with the bookseller who complimented her English.
Those little validations must add up.
They really do. They're like little bursts of encouragement that keep you motivated and reinforce that you're on the right track.
She kept practicing in public, too. Reading in the park.
Reading, even whispering things to herself in English, getting comfortable using the language out in the open, becoming less self-conscious.
That suggests growing confidence, not worrying about who might hear her practicing.
Absolutely. And then came that great moment with the tourists.
Right. She gave directions?
Yeah, someone asked her for directions. She gave them clearly in English, and the tourist actually praised her English.
Wow. A spontaneous, successful, real-world communication. That must have felt amazing.
Like a real moment of arrival, I imagine.
Yeah.
Proof that her skills were practical, useful in real life. A huge confidence boost.
And she reflected on that feeling of realness.
Yes. I used English today. Not in class, not in an app. In life. With people. And it felt real. That authenticity is what makes the learning stick, makes it meaningful.
It moves it from an academic exercise to a life skill.
Exactly. And she realized her thoughts in English didn't feel like learning anymore. They just felt like living. It had become natural.
So with this real-world confidence blooming, how did that further shape her internal voice?
She doubled down on the positive reinforcement. Still starting her mornings repeating, I believe in my English voice, keeping that confidence nurtured.
Why is that ongoing affirmation still important, even when she's more confident?
Confidence needs maintenance. It's like tending a garden. Those daily affirmations keep the positive mindset strong, reinforcing her identity as a capable English speaker, protecting against lingering doubts.
She saw the results in everyday things, like ordering coffee.
Effortlessly, having a natural, friendly chat with the barista, no translation needed, no awkwardness, just easy, spontaneous communication. That's a huge sign of comfort and fluency.
It shows English has become automatic in those situations.
Completely. And she even made a list, consciously documenting the positive things her inner English voice was now saying to her.
Actively recognizing that internal shift. Why is that helpful?
It makes the progress concrete. Seeing it written down, here's how I used to talk to myself, here's how I talk to myself now, provides powerful validation and reinforces the positive changes.
She kept up the walking and whispering habit, too.
Yes, that constant low-level internal engagement, keeping the language active in her mind throughout the day, consistency is key.
And then the moment with the recordings. Comparing old and new.
Yes. That was incredibly powerful for her. She found an old recording of herself speaking English, hesitant, uncertain, and compared it to a new one, clear, confident.
What was her reaction?
Tears. Tears of pride, recognition. Just seeing, or rather hearing, the tangible proof of how far she'd come, it was deeply emotional.
Having that concrete evidence of your own transformation,
Yeah.
I can see how that would be overwhelming in a good way.
Absolutely. It silences doubts like nothing else. And she reflected on that change. I used to fear speaking English. Now I use English to speak my dreams.
What a turnaround from fear to empowerment.
And she felt like that old doubting voice was finally gone. Only her confident English voice remained.
Okay, so she's feeling confident, comfortable. Her inner critic is silenced. What's the next challenge? Where does she go from this point of strength?
She felt ready for something more. She consciously decided to push her comfort zone again and joined a local English-speaking club.
Moving into a more structured, social, conversational setting.
Exactly. Not just random encounters, but sustained interaction with other speakers.
Why seek that out? What does a club offer?
It offers consistent practice in real-time conversation. You have to listen actively, formulate responses, express opinions, maybe even debate a little. It really sharpens your interactive skills in a supportive environment.
It must have been nerve-wracking, though, walking into a room full of English speakers.
I'm sure it was. She had to introduce herself, join conversations, navigate discussions, probably still had moments of hesitation.
What skills do you really hone in that kind of setting?
So many. Active listening, turn-taking, expressing complex ideas, understanding different accents, handling misunderstandings gracefully. It's a fantastic training ground.
And she found support there. Other people understood her journey.
Yes, she found that many members also recognized the importance of thinking in English, of pushing past perfectionism. That shared understanding created a real sense of community.
How important is finding that community when you're learning?
It can make a huge difference. Knowing you're not alone, sharing tips and struggles, celebrating successes together, it provides motivation, support, and perspective.
And she made friends, felt inspired.
Right. She realized she found her English voice partly because of interacting with these strangers turned friends, and she had that lovely reflection, my English is not perfect, but it is real.
That authenticity again. Real connection over perfect grammar.
It's such a liberating perspective. It allows you to just communicate genuinely.
And she kept dreaming in English, kept seeing learning as ongoing.
Yes, embracing that it's a continuous journey, not a final destination to be reached. That long-term view is crucial for sustained progress.
And her ultimate lesson.
Thinking in English is not just about language. It is about living the language, bringing it full circle. It has to be integrated into your life.
Okay, so that brings us towards the culmination of this part of her journey. What happened after all this effort?
Well, after all these months of really dedicated work, this mindset shift, this consistent practice, a really significant opportunity came up.
What was it?
She was invited to give a short speech in English at an international conference about her learning journey.
Wow. From being tongue-tied on a client call to speaking at an international conference about it. That's incredible.
Isn't it? It's such a testament to her focused effort and the potential for transformation when you really commit to learning and changing your mindset.
How did she prepare? Was she nervous?
I'm sure she was nervous, but she prepared. Practice in front of the mirror, using those affirmations she'd developed. I am ready. Building up her self-assurance.
And how did the speech go?
She delivered it confidently, shared her story, her struggles, her breakthroughs, talking about learning to think and live in English.
And what was her main message to other learners in the audience?
It came back to that key theme. Prioritize bravery over perfection. Be willing to try, to make mistakes, to put yourself out there, even when you don't feel 100% ready.
Such an important message. Fear of imperfection holds so many people back.
It really does. And her message clearly resonated. She got a really warm reception, felt a huge sense of accomplishment.
But she knew it wasn't the end.
Right. She recognized it as a major milestone, absolutely, but also understood that language learning is lifelong. This was just the beginning of a new chapter.
And the story ends with this encouragement for everyone listening, doesn't it?
Yes, reminding you that you can start your own journey today with just one sentence, one small step, one word, one dream. It's a really hopeful and empowering conclusion.
It really is a fantastic story of transformation.
It truly shows what's possible with the right approach and mindset.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive into Maya's journey, let's quickly pull together those key takeaways again. We saw the power of immersion, right? Even small things like changing phone settings.
Absolutely. And the critical importance of changing that internal dialogue, challenging the negative voice and building a positive one, that was huge for her.
Definitely. And embracing mistakes, seeing them not as failures, but as teachers. That reframing is essential.
And that fundamental shift from just studying the language to actively living it, integrating it into every part of her day.
Right. And the core message really seems to be that learning to think in a language like English goes way beyond just words and grammar.
It's transformative. It impacts your confidence, how you connect with people, how you see yourself in the world. It's about finding a new way to be.
So for you listening, maybe you're learning a language, maybe you're tackling another challenge. Think about Maya's strategies. How could you create more immersion in your own life?
Yeah, or how could you become more aware of your own internal self-talk? Could you reframe mistakes in a more positive light? Could you shift from just learning about something to actively living it?
Which brings us to a final thought for you to maybe chew on.
What's one small shift, just one that you could make in your mindset or maybe in your daily routine starting today that might unlock a new level of understanding or fluency in whatever it is you're learning or striving for right now?
Something definitely worth considering. Thank you so much for joining us today for this deep dive into Maya's really inspiring story.